Hi friends in IFES, Sarah Breuel here from IFES Europe. I was asked to share a little bit how God is moving through prayer here in Europe. Well, to answer to that, I'll just give a bit of background of how God has been moving in the previous months. So in 2019, 3,000 students from 68 nations came together from all across Europe, and we gathered together for 5 days over New Year's and to pray and sow for revival in Europe. The name of this gathering was Revive Europe, but it was more than just a 5-day gathering together. We're really trying to be part of a wave of prayer. So as a lead up to this gathering, we had a 40-week prayer campaign. We started back in February, more than a year ago, last year, and it was 40 week because it was 40 countries. So every week we highlighted a country. The students produced a 1-minute video of how to pray for that country, how to pray for revival in that country, how to pray for the challenges in that country. And we went, Italy, Netherlands, Estonia, Bulgaria, and just kept going for 40 weeks. And it culminated with us gathering together to pray for revival in Europe. As you might imagine, we have been in this journey with the students, praying, God, shake this continent, move in powerful ways, do something amazing. And obviously none of us had anticipated that basically right after the gathering, about a month, this pandemic hits the world and hits Europe. And we've received so many messages from the students saying, we couldn't help but wonder, obviously not saying that God intended any of this, but we have been asking for a shaking. And this is a time that our continent is being shaken. So we can, stand firm in prayer. So some participants asking, let's get together in prayer in this pandemic. And we thought it was an important opportunity to be together in prayer again and continue this. So as soon as some of the nations were going through lockdown, we had our first prayer meeting in March. And it was amazing. We didn't know how many people would show up. We had 350 people from all over the continent, and it was wonderful to hear testimonies of how God was working after Revive Europe, and also spend time praying for revival, and then hear from people who are on the ground. 1 month ago, the hardest regions that were hit by the pandemic were northern Italy in northern Spain. So we heard from students in northern Italy and northern Spain, how was their situation, how they are going through this, and then spend time just praying and standing with solidarity with them and other students. So it was a mixture of all of us together. It was through Zoom. So all of us together in Zoom, you could see, pages and pages and people from all over the nations, which was breathtaking, but also dividing in small groups and just saying, hey, no complicated words, just pray from your heart, just, jumping together. So we jumping together with people with different nations and had times in small groups. So after this meeting, it was so exciting. The students, when we, say bye to everybody, a lot of people wouldn't leave. And they're like starting to get their guitar and drums and just hanging out and enjoying the time together. So they kind of had an informal, not planned after party that lasted for, more than 2 hours. And we just let, the students have fun. And many of the participants wrote us after, say, this is amazing to be standing together as Europeans. Can you guys organize another one? So we were encouraged by that, and we organized another about a month after. So this was last week. And again, it was a time to hear testimonies. Testimonies have been encouraging, just people saying, not only how they're going through personally to the pandemic, but how God has been working. And specifically, testimonies of how God has been stirring prayer for revival. It's amazing to hear, students and staff workers in Norway being stirred to prayer and revival in Finland, Denmark, and then testimonies not only from our IFES, but we had other organizations with us who were, so many other evangelical alliances, so many other student ministries, and prayer movements are in this time in prayer and fasting on our knees, crying out to God. So it was wonderful to stand in prayer with that. We had in the second one, Joe Lennox, Professor John Lennox came as a guest speaker. He has written a book, Where is God in a Coronavirus World? So we had him just speak for 15 minutes about this topic and a little bit of his testimony, which was incredibly encouraging for us. And I was asked to say what will be first, why is important prayer in this time? Obviously, prayer and fasting is important, in every season. I believe that this is a life conviction for me. I'm giving my life to prayer in my room, just in the next door from me, but also through Revive Era prayer, we try to make it very central because, this is God's work. This is not our work. So on our knees is when we are the most dependent we are from God. That's when we are the strongest, just dependent on Him. But especially through this pandemic, I just think that God is getting our attention, isn't He? It's this time to cry out to God, to just be on our knees and crying out for Him and ask God, how are you seeing all of this? What can we learn from this as a church? What can we learn from this as a student movement? And be genuinely be seeking God with our whole hearts. So this was the first question: why prayer important now? Obviously, prayer is important now, not only to be dependent and to hear God's voice, but to pray through this pandemic for people who are in the front lines and doctors and authorities. This is a time maybe more than ever to be searching our God and depending on Him. And we do believe that we have been sowing for praying. We're sowing for revival. So it is a time that in the shaking, God, do something amazing that only you can do. So what an opportunity to pray for revival in the student generation. And lastly, I was also asked to say, if you are to organize a prayer meeting in your context, wherever you're watching this, what would be some encouragements? I would say the encouragements is just to facilitate time to people to pray with their hearts. It doesn't have to be super fancy and super complex, and just setting the right tone that God is not interested in, big speeches or anything. Let's just pray from our heart and be real, talk with our God, with our friend. And the most heartfelt and genuine, I think, is the most pleasing incense that we lift up to our God. I hope you are encouraged to pray during this pandemic. We have been incredibly encouraged to see not only prayer, but to see how God is moving through this. Some movements in Europe have been very visible on campus online. I'll just give one example. This very week, the German-speaking countries, so that's Germany, Swiss German, Austria, they got together and organized, a lot of the students organize usually a mission week, to be a week of events, to be very visible on campus, sharing about Jesus through debates, through lunch bars, etc. But obviously everything it's not, the campuses are closed. So they did one central mission weeks, and I've heard they had, each evening about 1,000 views of students that invite their friends. And apparently about 5,000 views it will get into the next day, so students sharing. So my encouragement would be, let's go as deep and as we can with intimacy with Jesus, and let's be as visible as possible on campus with our friends, with our groups. This is the time for the bride of Christ to shine. So maybe you'll be encouraged and shine Jesus, maybe like never before. Thank you. All my greetings from Rome, Italy. Bye-bye.